Arch Advocate Show, September 11th, 17 years later. Here we are. We all remember that day. I remember exactly where I was. It's kind of a weird thing. Like today, there's approximately 340 million people in America. So, approximately the question will be posed today, where were you on September 11th? That question's going to be posed, probably over 300 million times. Right? Where were you? I remember vividly where I was. I was in my car. I was on my way to work. I was a commodity trader. And when I went to work every day, everything that we did went through those buildings. Every transaction. We'd have, every time we placed a trade or, canceled a trade or whatever, anytime we did anything, it went through that building. We owned a seat on the floor of the trading floor in the World Trade Center. Like if you want to see what that floor looked like, you can go watch the Eddie Murphy movie. What was that? Trading Places, right? At that final scene when they're trading at the end. That was the floor, right? I was on my way to work in California, and I had to be to work before market open, 8:30 Eastern time, 5:30 Pacific, right? So it was probably a little bit after 5 a.m. I was in my car, just leaving my neighborhood when my phone rang. And an old friend had called me. She knew that, she knew what I did for a living. She called me up. I remember I was pulling up to a stop sign when my phone rang. I answered it. She says, hey, did you hear that there was a plane crash? A plane hit the World Trade Center. And as she said that, my imagination was trying to paint a picture, and so in my mind, I saw a Cessna, just a single prop airplane with some dude, flying it. An accident. It wouldn't be absurd, right? Because there's two major airports right there, JFK and LaGuardia. Is that LaGuardia there in New Jersey? Or whatever that one in New Jersey is. Is LaGuardia Chicago or whatever? There's two major airports right there. One in New York and one in New Jersey. So the fact that there's not an airplane accident every day is a miracle. That is a very busy place in the air. Every day. There's international flights coming in and out of there all day. Every day. Right? So as she said this to me, like, hey, there's a plane crash, I was thinking, oh, that's terrible. What an unfortunate soul to have crashed into those very large buildings that protruded very high up into the sky. And she says, no. They're saying we might be under attack. Under attack? What are you talking about? She says, oh, that apparently there's a second plane. And literally my response was like, oh my God, two people? Like, was the other plane, like, just trying to fly in close to find out what happened to the first plane, and then they accidentally crashed into the World Trade Center? Like, my mind would not even consider, like, it didn't even cross my mind that they might have been, 747s, passenger jets made by Boeing, jets that carried hundreds of people. It didn't even cross my mind. And I says, well, listen, let me turn on the news, and thanks for calling. I'll talk to you later. So I hung up, and I was, trying to find out what was going on the radio, but it was West Coast radio. There wasn't a whole lot going on. So I, drove to work, got there, went up, got in the elevator, went up. We were right there in Costa Mesa, right off of Anton Boulevard. I remember that. Walk into the office where, in our office there was, television screens everywhere and computer screens, and all the traders were there, and all, everybody was there. And I looked up at the screen, and sure enough, both buildings were on fire, or, at least billowing smoke. Then, it was in that moment that I realized, like, oh no, like there's something very serious has happened. And we sat there all day, right? Fielding phone calls from our clients. Hey, what's going on? And it's like, man, I know as much as you do. You know, you want to know what's going on, turn on the news. Everybody was, speculating and who could have done this. And then it turns out there was, a plane crash in a field. There was also another plane crash at the Pentagon. It was clear that we were under attack. And the markets were closed. And there was nothing we could do but just sit there and watch. Now that's, those memories are vivid. I remember, the guy, as we were sitting there just staring into the television screens, watching, CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, we had them all. Every news organization, anybody who provides news, we had a dedicated television screen for that outlet. And I remember the guy who mentored me, the man who taught me how to trade, right, how to do that very complicated math in my head, so that, I could quote things to clients and whatnot. One of the smartest men I've ever met in real life. Like, he was a genius. He also had some very severe problems, right? He was one of those geniuses that was so smart that he was crazy. I made this observation many times before on the podcast. Like, he was a guy that, sat at international tables of exchange for over 30 years. Like, this guy was extremely smart, and at the same time, and by the way, made a lot of money, very wealthy guy. But very often, on Monday mornings, if he was not at work, it was because we had to go downtown and look through all the bums and find him, because very often we would find him passed out on the street, very often beat up. He had a very severe drinking problem, but at the same time, like when he was working, boy, he was smart. But I remember as we were all sitting there watching the TV screens, he walked onto the trading floor where we all were, looked up at the screens, and just started bellowing laughter. I remember that, looking at him like, why are you, I remember looking at it like, is this some sort of like fear response? You know what I mean? Because sometimes, like, being very afraid or even being in a great deal of pain can actually cause laughter. Like, there's a crossing of the wires, if you will. That's pretty well documented. It can happen. It's rare, but it certainly does happen. I remember looking at that thinking, I wonder if he's, if his wires are crossed. But I remember him laughing, looking at the screens and laughing. I remember that. It's like the funny little things that we remember. I remember my friend calling me. I remember the stop sign. I remember my response and thinking like, oh, it was a Cessna or something like that. And it's a strange thought when you think about it. Like, there are people who are alive today. Like, today, there's people who are turning 21 years old. They're going to celebrate their 21st birthday today. They were 4 years old when that happened. And they have no memory of it because they were 4. You know what I mean? Like, people don't have, I have memories of, little snapshots of when I was 4, but they're not clear and they're not extensive. You know what I mean? Like, your ability to retain things at that age it's not great. So there's people that are celebrating their 21st birthday today that were born and raised in the United States, and they have no memory of that day. They were too young. And today, they are old enough to vote, they are old enough to serve in the armed forces, and today they are old enough to drink. Happy birthday to you. Right? They're adults, they're grown-ups. Many of them have children of their own now. And to them, that's, the memory of September 11th is something that exists in history books and on TV, and it wasn't real, and you know what I mean? The memory isn't profound to them as it is to us, because to us, it seems just like yesterday. It seemed like it just happened. For those of us who were old, in our late teens or even late 20s, like I was. Perhaps you were in your early to mid 30s, whatever, like whoever you are. Like if you were old enough then, like that memory is fresh. It seems like it just happened yesterday. So isn't that a bizarre thought to think that there are young people, adults, full-grown human beings that they don't have a memory of that, even though they were alive when it happened. It was that long ago for those people. It's kind of a weird thought, right? But look, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around that. I wanted to talk about that because I've made this observation before. I'm not, look, I love conspiracy theories, but at the same time, like, I have that mechanism where I can dispel them pretty quickly, right? If there's no money involved, then there is no conspiracy theory. You know what I mean? If you can't follow the money, like when people talk about flat Earth, it's like, dude, there's no money in that for anybody. Nobody's going to dedicate a whole bunch of, money and the history of it. You know what I mean? The history, the hundreds of years of history when people have been saying, no, the Earth is round, right? There was no money in it for those people. There's no money in perpetuating some myth that the Earth is round. There's no money in it. That's a dumb, you know what I mean? Like you can cut that off pretty quickly. Also, I don't like a lot of conspiracy theories because, when you get into that, they all depend on people working together. And people don't work together very well, right? I'll give you a perfect example. In war, you want to know what the number 2 cause of death in war is? It's called fratricide. Fratricide means killing of your brother, right? And in some of our wars, fratricide is actually the number 1 cause of death, right? Like more people died from friendly fire than they did from enemy fire, right? People are not very well organized, especially when the stakes are high, right? And so when you get into conspiracy theories, the problem with that is that it depends on people working together in unison. And history has shown us that that's too tall of an order for most people, if not all people. Like take for example, you want to get into the conspiracy theory that was all an inside job. Okay, let's have a look at that. Do governments have a history of doing that? Right? Well, there is historical precedent for that. There was a bombing of London during the Second World War. And the English had, we had cracked what was called the Enigma code, right? The Germans were using this encrypted code and nobody knew how to figure it out until they did, right? We figured out the code. And one of the messages that was decrypted was that the Germans were planning a bombing raid on London. And the English had intercepted this code, and the decision came down to, I believe it was Winston Churchill. And they said, well, if we evacuate London, and if we if we try to meet these bomber planes in the sky, then they will know that we have figured out the code. And we need them to still believe that we don't know what they're saying, so that we can, continue to see what they're doing next, so that we can defeat them, right? And so the decision came down. They allowed a bombing raid to happen on London, and a lot of people died. And the government at the time knew it was coming. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a very well documented fact. It's not a theory. So we know that government people, politicians, world leaders, we know that they are at least capable of it. You could go back to the conspiracy theory of the Gulf of Tonkin, right? The USS, what was it, Madison or something like that. A Navy ship was bombed. An American U.S. naval ship was bombed in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is right there next to Vietnam. And there were conspiracy theories about that for decades. that it was an inside job. And then many years later, it turns out that there was a lot of shady stuff going around that particular bombing, and that ultimately all of that shady stuff that was going on by U.S. government officials, it was all an effort to get us involved in the war in Vietnam. That's no longer a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. You can go back to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, right? The U.S. Navy intercepted communications from the Japanese Navy saying that they were going to bomb the U.S. naval shipyard at Pearl in Hawaii. They knew it, they intercepted it, they saw it coming, and they ordered the U.S. Navy to open up a wide berth to let those people come in and attack a U.S. military base. That is not a conspiracy theory, that is a fact. It is well documented. So now we have what's called precedent, right? You take that into consideration, the precedent. We know that these people do these sorts of things, right? The problem with September 11th, though, is that there's a lot of moving parts to it. You've got the Twin Towers. That's the only thing that people see, most people, right? And I myself, look, I believe that, 19 Saudi Arabian people took over those planes. I believe that. I believe that that was an effort by people who hate the United States and more specifically hate the Christian world, right? I believe that the origin of that attack was outside of the United States. So the Twin Towers themselves, yeah, or at least those two planes that struck them, yes, I believe that was an attack from people outside of the United States who hate us and our way of life. And the fact that God has blessed us more than he's blessed any other nation as far as freedom and economic prosperity and ingenuity and these sorts of things. However, there are some glaring facts that are you cannot work away from. Now again, conspiracy theory. The problem with conspiracy theory is that you have to get everybody on the same page, and we know that's nearly impossible to do. I'll give you a good example. We all know that Donna Brazile fed questions to Hillary Clinton. She went to Hillary Clinton and said, listen, these are the questions I'm going to be asking you. So when you get these questions, you'll know how to answer, right? That's called conspiring, working together for a deviant cause, right? Now, it's clear that the Democrats have a great deal of influence on certain media outlets, right? MSNBC, CNN, these sorts of people. So when Matt Lauer sits down with Hillary Clinton, he has a script that he's been given by the Hillary people. And he was supposed to ask certain questions, right? He's a team player for the Democrats, Matt Lauer. He sits down with Hillary Clinton and he goes completely off the reservation and starts asking her some very uncomfortable questions, and she completely stutters her way through that interview. And then, after that interview, there are people in the Hillary camp that said she went in the back and she was calling for Matt Lauer's death and dropping F-bombs all over the place. Matt Lauer was supposed to be on the team, and for some reason he just couldn't help himself. You see what I'm saying? Getting people to work together, people who have egos, people who have agendas, people who have all sorts of things. You know what I mean? You can't keep people on the same page, man. It's like herding cats. Very difficult. That's why we know what we know about the Gulf of Tonkin. It's why we know what we know about Pearl Harbor. It's why we know what we know about, the bombing of London. Because you can't keep people on the same page, man. It's impossible. So that's why I don't like conspiracy theories, because it's like what you're saying is that all these people are in on it and they're all working together. It's like, people aren't that good. The truth somehow always finds its way to the top. Sometimes it takes decades and sometimes it takes hundreds of years, but it always comes up, right? Now, the problem with September 11th is this, is we all have footage. We've all seen it. We saw the footage at the Pentagon building where the reporter from CNN is standing there in front of the burning building telling the people back in the studio, he says, I don't see any plane wreckage here. All I see is this building exploded. There's not a single piece of airplane here. I don't get it. I don't know what's happening here. There's no plane, and you can see it, like, you can see the video footage. There's no airplane. Then there's Tower 7, the Solomon Brothers building, right? World Trade Center building number 7, or building 3, or whatever it is. The Solomon building. This is a huge problem, right? For the people who would call me a conspiracy theorist, the people that would call you a conspiracy theorist, it's like, okay, fair enough. Maybe I'm crazy, right? Nothing wrong with being crazy. Professor John Nash, who that movie A Beautiful Mind is about, he's an actual person, right? That movie is based on an actual guy who is a profoundly brilliant economist and teaches at, what was it, Princeton? Right? He has horrible schizophrenia. He sees people who aren't actually there. There's really nothing, you know what I mean? But being crazy by itself, there's really nothing wrong with that. You can be crazy and be of huge benefit to the, to the world around you. So it's like, okay, well, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am crazy. But you look at it. What do you see? When Tower 7 falls, what do you see? Because there's only one thing to see. You see a building coming down perfectly. Right? Oh, Pete, they've brought in scientists. They've completely explained all this. Wait a minute. Let's hold on. Let's find a pattern here, shall we? When you and I were growing up, right? Every time that there was a demolition of a high-rise building, that was newsworthy. There would be film crews, news people with trucks and cameras and, cranes and all that other stuff. All that stuff. Every time. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Anytime in America there was a high-rise building that had to be brought down, they would go out and film it and put it on the news because it was like, wow, look at this. Look at this. I mean, it's like a train wreck, only it's controlled. And what would they have? They would always have, the engineers and the demolition experts and all these people, all the people that put in like the mathematical work. They'd have those people in an interview. And they always tell us like, oh man, you don't even understand, like everything here has to be done perfectly. And they'd show you the graphs of like, well, we've got explosions on all of these different, points in this building. And if these don't all explode at exactly the right time, this building isn't going to fall straight down, it's going to tip. And that's why we have to evacuate all these people from all the area around, even our workers, because like there's a very good chance that something will go wrong. A fuse won't light, something won't ignite at the same time that, at the time that we need it to go. And if that happens, this building's going to fall over. It's not going to fall down. And that's going to be a huge problem because we're trying to drop this building in the middle of a city. We're trying to drop it so that the debris doesn't get over into the street. Right? You remember that. How many times did we see that? 4 or 5 times in our life? And every single time, there'd be some guy in a construction hat wearing a tie, and he'd be like, yeah, hi, I'm the engineer. I'm the guy who has the flannel saying all this, and let me tell you something. This is a very difficult proposal. It involves explosions. and it involves timing. And if everything isn't done exactly at the right time, this building will not come straight down. So you go back and you watch the footage of World Trade Center Building 7. You go watch it. It comes straight down. Well, why is that of note? Well, because that building wasn't hit by anything. It wasn't hit by a plane. Oh, but Pete, the experts came in and they said, some of the debris fell on it. Okay, well that's inconsistent. That's a breach of pattern. Because according to every engineer that I've ever heard, in order for a building to come straight down, there has to be a great deal of mathematics involved. There has to be on-time explosions, and furthermore, what's even more bizarre about that is that the BBC was reporting that Building 7 had collapsed when it had not. In fact, the reporting of the collapse of Building 7 is being done like on a live feed with Building 7 in the background. You can see it. And they are standing there reporting that Building 7 had collapsed. Why would they do that? Why would they mistake that when there was clearly other news happening that was noteworthy? The Twin Towers had been struck, and they're over there reporting that Building 7 had collapsed when it had not. That's bizarre, right? That's out of pattern. Pattern recognition. That's what, you know what I mean? That's what separates us from the monkeys. So you've got the Pentagon building, and just the day before, Donald Rumsfeld had announced to the world, to the American people, that according to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. That was the day before. And then the very next day, there's an explosion at the Pentagon that did not involve an airplane. That we can see. When people call you a conspiracy theorist, say, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong. So I want you to sit here and watch the CNN footage of the Pentagon disaster. You can see the reporter stating very clearly, there's no plane wreckage here. Here, let me pull it up. You know what? Evidently, finding that particular clip of CNN reporting that does not pull up easily on YouTube, but we've all seen it, right? You see it every time when they post it on Facebook. I'm sure you'll be able to find it today. It's like you want to call me crazy. Okay, you look at it. You look at Tower 7 falling, and tell me what you see. Oh, well, that's very easy to explain. It's like, well, no, it's not. No, it's not. Buildings falling straight down is, according to every expert that we've ever heard from, is a work of engineering, right? And listen, I don't want to make this particular episode, I don't want to make this about conspiracy theory. There's plenty. There's plenty to see. What I do want to make this about is the truth. In this very strange time that we are living in, it is my firm belief that there is a great deal of things that have been hidden that will be coming to light. Right? Again, conspiracy theory. The assassination of John F. Kennedy. Why is that still a secret? Why are the details of that murder investigation a secret? Right? You know, on September 11th, the world changed. September 11th of 2001, the world changed. My world certainly did. I know yours did too. The world changed that day. And there's a very good chance that there were people working in the United States government that were complicit. Right? Maybe not in the Twin Towers, but certainly allowing those attacks to happen. And then you get into the discussion of Building 7, and then you get into the discussion of the Pentagon. There's just too much there. Right? You want to call me a conspiracy theorist, you look at it and you tell me. And if your answer is well, the government said, nothing to see here. It's like, are you out of your effing mind? The government said, the government also said what they said about the Gulf of Tonkin until the truth was revealed. The government also said what they said about Pearl Harbor until the truth was revealed. If your argument is, well, the government said, that's like with Benghazi. What do the leftists always say? Well, Hillary Clinton was on Capitol Hill being grilled for 11 hours. I mean, obviously, she's not guilty of anything. Really? Right? Like it. Did you not hear from the guy who was actually there? Right? Did you not see it for yourself? Did you not see the CNN reporter saying, "Hey, I'm here. I can see the crash site, and there's no plane wreckage. There's nothing to suggest that a plane struck this building. It just looks like the damn thing exploded." And then suddenly they move him over behind some trucks and whatever to where he has no line of sight, and all of a sudden the narrative changes. Like, you didn't see that? You look at it for yourself. You tell me what you see. Again, the thing about conspiracy theories is like, why would you hide what actually happened with JFK? It's been so long. You could tell me that Lyndon B. Johnson was behind the entire attack, and I wouldn't care. I wasn't even alive then. Just tell me what the truth is. The reason why people have something to hide is because they're trying to protect power. Whatever it is that is being hidden about the JFK assassination, it's not going to be embarrassing to Cuba. They were already our enemy. It's not going to be embarrassing to the Soviet, the USSR, because they're not even a nation anymore. Whatever they're hiding is embarrassing to the power structure of the United States. It's the only explanation. The only people that can be embarrassed by the truth that we care about is our own people. And what are we going to find out? What are we going to find out when, the college transcripts of one Barack Hussein Obama is released? Right? When those things are demanded of by the sitting U.S. president. What are we going to find out if Donald Trump declassifies, the JFK assassination? What are we going to find out if he reopens some other investigations that were closed neatly and quietly, like Benghazi, like the Hillary Clinton email servers? Right? What happens if those are reopened? Remember, Hillary Clinton was never charged with a crime, therefore double jeopardy rules do not apply to her. Right? There's a lot of things that very, very well, very easily could be coming to light very soon. And it's only going to happen if Donald J. Trump does it. It's only going to happen if he does it. If the Democrats take power again, we are never going to know the truth about a great many of these things, because they'll just be buried. Do you think if Hillary Clinton had won the presidency, do you think that there would be do you think that you would even know that there was a secret convening of court, what's called a FISA court, where government officials decided to spy on a U.S. citizen? One Donald J. Trump. Do you think you would know that? Do you think it would be damaging to the American people if they knew that there were secret courts going on and people were deciding to spy on American citizens? That's what's happening right now. And the fact that Donald J. Trump is even president at all is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. He won an election that was rigged against him. It's a miracle that he's in there, and I believe that there are more miracles to come. And we're going to find out, I believe, some very uncomfortable things about why the world is different now because of September 11th. You think about it. Think about it like this. When John F. Kennedy was killed, let's just pretend that it was, a magic bullet, single shooter. What was that guy's name? Hinckley? Was it John F. Who was it that shot Kennedy? I can't remember, but let's just say it was him, right? Well, then that man changed the world, right? The most powerful man in the world, the leader of the free world, was replaced. See what I'm saying? John F. Kennedy was taken out and another person was put in his seat. The world changed dramatically that day. Dramatically. The same thing happened when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. The world changed that day. Right? When who was the guy? Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, and we went into World War I. The world changed that day. And World War I, by the way, World War I was by far the most brutal war in recorded history. And it started the day that man was assassinated. Right? So these things, like when the world changes like that, it's a big, big deal. And as it is that we're looking at September 11th, it's like that day changed the world. The world's not the same place it was the day before. And there's people that need to answer some very difficult questions. And the truth will come out, because the truth always does. Because people are not very well organized. They don't work very well together when egos and careers and agendas are on the line. There is a lot that's going to be coming out. And if it doesn't, I strongly recommend that you keep the pressure on Donald Trump to declassify things and to reveal the truth. We need to know. We need to know who these people are and what they've been doing. Right? Again, you think about it, like you think about the bombing of London when the English people let the Germans just come over and bomb the crap out of London. The argument can be made that strategically that was the right decision to make, but what if it was your kids? You know what I mean? What if it was your kids? You see what I'm saying? There are things that need to come to light, because you need to know what kind of people are the ones pulling the strings. You need to know what kind of people these are. Right? Well, here's a real simple one. Remember when Dick Cheney shot that dude in his face? Right? Remember that? And the news was, it was an accident. They were just out there hunting. No. You don't shoot a man in his face on accident. That's not an accident that you have. He shot that dude in his face because he had beef with him. That's who those people are. Those are the kind of people that shoot their own friends in the face because they have beef with one another. Oh, that's all conspiracy theory. Really? How much do you know about guns? You know what I mean? How much do you know about guns? What do you mean it was an accident? You shot him square in his face? That's not an accident. I have a friend that was accidentally shot. He was shot in the leg. And the accident is because the guy that he went shooting with, his kid decided to pick up the gun. He shot him on accident. That was an accident. Shot him in his leg. But a grown-ass man, you know what I mean, that's been hunting his whole life? No, that's not an accident. That's not an accident. Now, if the report would have come out that there was a whole bunch of Jack Daniels involved, okay, that would be a little bit more, but there was none of that. There was just, oh, we were just walking, and boy, I don't know how, but my finger came around the trigger, and it just so happened that the barrel was pointed squarely at this dude's face. Bullshit. You know what I mean? Anyways, things to think about as we progress, in this very strange time that we're in, as we look around and the truth will be emerging. The truth about George W. Bush, that is emerging. It is becoming clearer and clearer that he's one of them. Right? He's part of the evil cabal that have been trying to ruin the United States and ruin the world in that process. For what reason? Who knows? Who knows why the devil does what he does? Right? Anyways, if you want to keep the show going, I would appreciate your support. You can support me with money by going to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com, become a Patreon supporter, or just send some dough through PayPal, whatever. Keeps the show going. I appreciate you guys. Hit subscribe, hit like, hit share, all that stuff. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.